Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we highlight the mindset and journeys of real leaders who create, sell, and impact. Today, I'm honored to be hosted by Phil Whitebloom, a sales legend with over 40 years of experience, former VP of Sales and Sony Electronics, author and founders of Being There Consulting. Phil has sold over 1.5 billions dollars in products and coached team at every level. This conversation is packed with real world sales wisdom. Let's dive into it. So what was it like growing up for you, Phil?
Growing up, there was nothing special. I have no big story. The good news is I don't have any big crises. I just was very middle class here in the United States growing up. My father was a public servant. My mother was a stay-home mom, and I have one sister. And I was born in the Chicago area in Illinois, and really just kind of went through just a pretty average path. You're going through elementary school and middle school and high school, and then on to college, which is where things really started to change when I got into college and then beyond.
Wow, amazing. So you have spent over 40 years in sales leadership. What moment or experience made you realize sales would be your life work?
So I didn't really realize it right away, but I was always in a role where I was helping others. And when I graduated college, I got my first job in sales, and I was selling office equipment, dictation equipment, specifically, if anybody's old enough to remember what that was or is. And I learned a lot, but it was really helping, in this case, a lot of lawyers and insurance people and other types of businesses, hospitals, to make their job easier in how they kept records, how they kept notes, how they made reminders for themselves, and all those things. So it was all about helping others to do their jobs better. And then that just grew and grew and grew. And that's the reason really why I still am doing this today after I retired, but failed at retiring when I started my business. So
Amazing. You often talk about service and team success. Where did that philosophy come from?
I could tell you, I started in college, and because I was very active on the student activities board at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh, and we had a very active, large board of students that were responsible for all kinds of entertainment for everybody on campus, and we had such an effective group. We had to turn people away. Most universities and schools that are looking for people, almost begging them to come and join their organizations. We had to interview because we didn't have jobs for more than 80 people. So we cut it off at 80. And we were responsible for the movies, bands, all kinds of other types of entertainment that went on throughout the year for the students. But we had to work on our committees, and we had a government structure that was effective, not ineffective. And we had to work within the state of Wisconsin guidelines and the university guidelines and all these other things, because we were actually really in business. We generated revenue. We spent money for the things that we needed. We had good sales, but we worked as a team, and it took the entire team, people, to pull off any kind of event. Even some of the small ones still required sometimes 10 people minimum just to get it going. So, and we had to be scheduled out through the year. So everything was team oriented. There was no way any one person could do it. And if anybody was working by themselves and not working with a team, it was going to fail. There was no question.
Wow.
But we didn't really experience that.
Wow, that was really amazing. So from entry levels rolled out to VP at Sony, what was the toughest stage of your journey?
There was a lot of change. So I went in there. It wasn't my first job out of college. I was already an experienced salesperson when I was recruited to join Sony, and that was back in 1986. I was there for 23 years. I retired from there in 2009. But when I was in there, one with a salesperson with a territory, that there was always a lot of change. And I tell everybody that, I said, in my 23 years, I could remember 33 boss changes. That doesn't even talk about how many times the company was reorganized as it was growing, because it went from a very big company to a gigantic company over those 23 years. And so there wasn't as many ups and downs because it was continually going up and up and up and up. for most of the time I was there. It did have problems that took place when things happened, like the economic crises that happened with the dot-com bust, and then there was 9/11, and there was a bunch of other things that happened in there. And because I was responsible for the majority of that time for Sony's government business in the United States, those had even a more a different kind of impact, if you will, because that was the government base. The government was the one who was involved in these situations.
Wow. Amazing. So what makes a great sales leaders in today's market?
Okay, I love that question. So thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
The great sales leaders are the ones who they ask a lot of questions. They work with their people, their salespeople. They have to be very clear on their communications and very consistent on their communications, and understanding if you're not the owner of the business, that everybody has to report to somebody. Even in a very big company like Sony, where you have a chief executive officer, that person still has to report up to a board of directors. As a salesperson, as a sales leader, you're responsible for driving revenue for the company, because if there's no revenue, nothing else really matters at the end of the day, because you can't pay for anything. And so relative to your sales teams and the people that support your teams, because there's other people, if you have services or you have products that need technical support, and there's all kinds of things and then you have purchasing and human resources, and you have all these other people. The sales leader really has to keep track of everything that's going on, has to motivate their people, has to communicate clearly and honestly up the line. What they decide to do with that information is beyond your control. And you have to be always ready to support the people that are working for you and working with you to try and help make things done, unless they've done something inappropriate or they haven't done their job right. They did things that were dishonest. Sometimes it happens there's been illegal. And from doing this for as many decades as I've done it, I've seen quite a bit, which is why I named my company Been There Consulting Services. To net it right out, it's going beyond listening. Everybody says listen more than talk, and that's a good thing. But it's how you listen and what you do with that information. And do you really know? You have to ask those questions beyond the answer that you got, so you can understand what's behind it. And a good sales manager, a great sales leader, is one who could understand and has the ability to flush out what's real and what's not real, because people get excited and motivated, people get nervous, and then they promise things that may not be actually accurate, to be diplomatic. Sometimes they're a little bit too aggressive on when a sale is going to happen, or overly optimistic that it is going to happen, then everybody's surprised when it doesn't happen, and inventory and everybody else who's depending on that, financial people, and it doesn't happen. That's a problem. So a sales leader's got to keep a great handle on that and communicate very well all the way along, and be able to handle problems and crises calmly, which has not always been my trait. That kind of grew with maturity, but because nobody likes to be surprised when it could have been avoided.
Yeah, amazing.
How was that? How was that answer?
Yeah, it was very robust, being that there was a whole lot of traits that great leaders have to actually embed, being that they have to keep track of a whole lot of things going on in the company, not just of the stock, not just of the day-to-day run of the business, but also of those who work with them, the team, and every other single person. And I think it's really amazing the way of STEAM leaders in terms of business, not just taking care of what the day-to-day entails, but taking care of those who work with them, so at least they will feel that they are being part of a team doing a great thing. And it's really amazing.
Thank you.
So many entrepreneurs fear selling. What mindset shift do they need to succeed?
Mindset shifts. Okay, so this is a really big thing. And I work with this right now as we're recording your podcast here. And there's examples of where really good people have things happen that are negative. In one case, I have one client who, by no fault of her own, her whole business got put out of business. Her employees had to be let go. She lost 400 customers. We won't get into how that happened or why that happened. It just happened, let's say. And now she's got to start over and everything else. And she had tremendous hit on her mindset, because for so many years, decades, she had this thriving business. And her biggest issue that she's dealing with in trying to restart and get new clients and all these other things was mindset, which I learned from talking with her. And so mindset shift in this case was to get her to remind her of why she was so successful before. So it's sounds like a strange thing for a sales coach, right? But not really, because I could see, I was able to identify by asking her many, many questions what was going on, and I could see that she had lost confidence. But she was so successful before. That didn't happen by accident, and she didn't keep all those employees and those customers for so long by accident. It was because she's excellent at what she does. She's brilliant, and she just she's in a very bad spot, and there's no question, there's no minimizing that or ignoring it, but reminding her of all the things that she does so well and the reason that she was so successful up until something really bad happened. It's kind of like a tsunami, right? You don't have any control over that. There's an earthquake in the ocean, the water comes up, and it does terrible things. Well, that's kind of what happened to her in her business. And so by reminding her of this and everything else, 2 days later, I set a meeting with her just to check on how she was doing. And she was smiling and everything else. I said, what happened? She goes, Phil, you changed my mind. You changed my mindset. Those are her words. And she actually got a new client between the day she talked to me and 2 days later.
Wow.
So the next day.
Amazing.
And so it's going to take a lot more for her to keep going, but she got her, I helped get her confidence back up. And so I really didn't do anything. I didn't teach her anything new. I didn't do anything. I just had to remind her of how good she was. And it was all true. It's not making stuff up, because making stuff up does not help, right? You got to tell the truth. So, and build on people's strengths. So mindset is really important. I've had my downs too. I mean, not everything's, I smile a lot and laugh a lot, tell a lot of jokes, but not, sometimes it's to cover up the things that aren't so happy. We're all victims of getting down to the dumps. So it's really trying to keep people around you who will be honest with you and help you to come out of it, right? Because sometimes you can't see it yourself.
Yeah,
mindset is everything. You really can't move forward without the proper state of mind.
Wow, amazing. Thanks for actually sharing that light. And I think it's very key most times being that when failure hits, sometimes it's easy to just go. Looking back, we almost commonalize almost everything we did right, owing to we hit the bottom, and the fact that you're able to remind her about some of the key things she did differently that actually brought the success. Those reflections was being needed, being that it's easy to lose confidence when things didn't go right. And entrepreneurship on its own is majorly things does not go right the way you think it is. You just have to keep picking yourself up. And I think it's very great that we keep reminding about ourselves what we actually more like did differently that make things change with time, because definitely a whole lot of thought is going to come into mind that you are not this good, you are not that good. But just remind yourself that this was what I did that made that changes. And I think those things are very, very key, so that we can detach from the emotions sometimes and make us face the reality and do something different.
Yeah. So, everything when you talk about these things and all the podcasts that you do, I've got, we've got my own, and been on so many and everything else. And so many conversations are serious, right? Because it's serious. Your people have to earn money, and companies have to earn money to stay in business, to help people have money to have the things that they want to have and all the nice things that everybody wants to have, and security and all those things. But what gets lost sometimes is you got to have fun.
Yeah.
Because if you're enjoying yourself and, going to your point, your question, what have you done differently? We like to have fun. It's a big, serious thing having to make those numbers, because, boy, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you look and how you're doing and everything else. It really matters about how much is sales. Sales is easy to measure, right? It's the easiest thing in all of business. Yeah. It's like binary. You either have it or you don't, and everything else doesn't matter if you don't have the number. And I always tell people, when you're making your numbers, you could get away with a lot of things.
Yeah.
When you're not, I have a term that says you got to look good in the shower until the numbers come in. In other words, you got to be doing all the right things to get there, so people have confidence that you're going to get there. And so I've done things that were fun. I've have different kinds of sales contests, and there's times when I set up for a large team of people that work for me. I had 16 people reporting directly to me at one point, and I bought everybody these hot dog cookers. They were George Foreman hot dog cookers. I don't know if you have them there in Nigeria or not, but we got all these. And I went out, bought them. I paid for them all myself. The company didn't pay for them.
Wow.
And for 2 days, we made 700 phone calls. I cooked hot dogs for everybody in the office, the people that
Ouch.
work for me around the United States. I sent them their own, so they had theirs. And for 2 days, we made 700 phone calls, sold just on the phone. One sale was over $200,000, but it was really about getting appointments and things like that, where all these calls were being made, because it was not likely that we were going to sell something, but we did get a over $200,000 sale with a well-timed phone call. And then we had prizes, and it was a really good thing. But what really came from that, from the business side, is one is we got a lot more appointments, which are going to turn into a lot more demonstrations, which are going to turn into a lot more sales. For 2 weeks in advance, they put together a list of all the people they could call. So not everybody picks up the telephone, right? And most people don't. So you have a very small percentage, which means even after those 2 days, you still had a list of hundreds of people for the entire team to keep on calling, because they've already identified them. They wouldn't have put them on the list if they weren't potential customers. So keeping things fun, always commending people for doing well, for having a success. The success could be getting an appointment in some place I was never able to get there. The success could be turning some customer who went to the competition and bringing them back. A success could be a very, very large sale, and a success could be a very small sale, but a very meaningful sale because it started one. When I was working with the White House, I won't go into the whole long story because we don't have a lot of time on that. After we had lost the business just before I joined, and working with them, we got an $11,000 sale, which depends on what you sell. Sounds like a lot, but where I was, that was a small thing. But I was so happy and dancing around. My boss thought I was crazy. And this is when I was a salesperson. Thought I was crazy. I said, I said, you guys don't get it. They said no more. And then over the next many years and presidents, I've sold them over $7 million worth of products from that one turnaround, right? And it was all about customer service. When somebody does something right, the littlest things could turn into the biggest successes long term. So you want to celebrate those. And when somebody does something wrong, you definitely want to be direct. You can't make it look like it was okay. But then once all that's over, you got to work with it, make sure it never happens again, to find out why it happened. But don't dwell on it. Just keep moving forward. And those are the things that really matter. So try and make it fun. Keep everybody's emotions up as best you can, because it's a stressful job.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks a whole lot for that. You teach tactical reward or strategy. What are the first 3 actions any salesperson should take to improve immediately?
Okay, great question. Another great question. Thank you. I do things tactically on purpose. The strategic part comes by doing a lot of these tactical things where you're working towards a larger thing. But you have to know you have to set your expectations. Set your expectations. So tactically, what am I going to accomplish in this meeting? Why am I going to this event? What am I going to get? You have to set those goals for yourself. Now, if you're in a sales call, like if you and I were having a meeting and I have an expectation going in of what I'd like to have happen by the end of that meeting, but your expectation is different potentially. Most likely it is. And the only one that really matters is yours, because you are the customer, the prospect. And so setting these expectations and asking the right questions to get these to find out what your expectations are, why those are your expectations, and then work to reach your expectations while still achieving the expectations of the salesperson or myself, if it was me, and what the needs are. And when you do that, when you're in line, you have a greater chance of success than not being in line. And most of the time when people say, well, I'm not a good closer, or a company wants to hire me because they say my people aren't good closers, it's not that they've got good closers, it's that they haven't done all the right things in order to have the ability to close. So they've missed things along the way. They haven't handled objections correctly or handled them at all. They haven't found the real reason. And so there's all kinds of things, but you have to set those expectations. And it's very tactical. It's like, what is it? Boom. There's no real such thing as setting an expectation for a long-term strategy, because that's going to change all the time to get, as things learn, and as you learn things as you're going along, things change because of situations that over time that are beyond your control or you could never think about, because if you could have thought about it, you would have prepared for it, right? So there's all kinds of things, but being tactical is how I do things, as in my definition of sales coaching for me and my business, is to help people get success right away. And my fastest one was somebody called me 2 hours after I coached him and turned a sale around from a sale he told me he'd lost. He got it back and it was 3 times the size that of the original one. And then there's been other people where it's been the next day. And so not everything happens that fast, but it's really about helping them to set the expectations and how to ask questions. There's so much more to it. We could go on for weeks. But when you do those things right, and I've been doing it for over 40 some years, so I'm blessed with the ability to help others with that knowledge.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Thanks so much, Phil. I think it just speaks volumes, setting expectation of what is expected and what you should do, more like a guideline. I think it's very, very key, being that it will guide you on what you expected to do, and it will serve more like a metric to guide everything you do. And it's easier to get your objective that very way compared to just spontaneously doing things without doing it right.
Yeah.
So how can entrepreneurs open more door and start more meaningful conversation?
You have to get out there. You know, being on Google and all those things is good, and being on LinkedIn, especially if you're in business, you know, LinkedIn is the gold standard, and you have to do those things. But the real way is, you know, marketing is important, but marketing's got to be in line with what you're doing, and you've got to have a way to measure it. Click-throughs alone don't do anything for you. You know, it gives you how much attention something drew, but you don't know anything more. If you didn't get a lead from it or whatever, but it's important. But you have to get out in front of people. You have to go on people's podcasts. So I appreciate your invite to me.
Thank you.
And so now I'm, you know, exposed to your audience, right? And I'm exposed to people in Nigeria because I can help people all over the world and with what I do, which is why I accepted your invitation, because I worked with people all over the world. And you have to be out in front of people. They get to see your face. They get to trust you. When you're in business, you'll hear this. This is pretty much universal. You know, people do business with people they know, they trust, and they like, right? And they don't know you if they don't see you. They don't trust you if they haven't had conversations with you and you haven't been and see how you work with them. If all you're talking about is yourself, you're not thinking about them, they're probably not going to trust that you're going to be focused on what their real needs are. You're focused on your own needs. And to like you is, you know, you can't like everybody. And sometimes you have to do business with people you don't like because they have the product or the service that you need. But it's a lot easier when you at least like and respect each other. So
true.
As an entrepreneur, and I would say pretty much in any business, even if you're not an entrepreneur, because I was in the corporate world my whole life until after I retired and started this business, you had to be out there. You had to be visible. You know, people recognize you when you're at a trade show, or they recognize you in a restaurant or on an airplane or wherever you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Storytelling play in winning deal today.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
I got a million stories. Storytelling. So people relate to stories. They may not remember you. They may not remember me. They may not remember what we're selling. You know, I always talk about those commercials that are on television. That the commercial, you love the commercial, but you have no idea what they were selling. Right? So it wasn't really an effective commercial, but your stories, people remember your stories and they can relate to their stories. So let me share a story with you. This just recently happened. I had somebody who was calling me, having a very tough time with her business, different person, and she's very upset and she's getting bad advice from her other coaches, and she was getting no results. And I talked to her for about an hour and a half, 90 minutes, and I told her to don't do any of the stuff that she was told to do before. They gave her 60 PowerPoint slides. They said, don't use any of them. Or pick out a couple that are relevant. You don't need more than 10, and you're going to be talking to the people. And she had this thing. She sent me a text message. If I had it right here in front of me, I would read it to you. But basically the text message she said, Phil, it was amazing. She goes, I had 7 people show up for my meeting. She goes, and all of them scheduled a consultation with me, and it's for pay. All of them scheduled. In fact, of them, 3 of them are bringing somebody else with them. So she went from having 0 to having 100% success. Now, I can't claim 100% success for everybody or maybe anybody really, but this is real. It just happened 2 weeks ago as of this recording. And she said, what you told me worked. So then I ask you, Aro, so what did you think of that story? What did you like best about that story?
Yeah, it's the fact that you share that before you actually came into the pictures, she has other persons telling her that there's a whole lot of blueprints she can use in terms of slide, and you told her that you just have to pick 10 from those major things they actually said, and yeah, execute it. And it's surprising that just that thing, a whole lot of change came into being. 7 persons was able to book, and yeah, they paid, which is a great relief compared to she doesn't have anything before.
So here we go, right? This is a real world example of to answer your question about the importance of storytelling. You have lots of things. You just shared, one or two of them that you really liked about it and why you're doing it. Now you're very interested, right? Have I given you anything more about my background? Do you know anything more? We only talked about one company. We just talked about Sony because most people recognize that name, right?
Yeah.
But I worked for other companies before Sony and then after I retired from there and did other things. But it's always about those stories. You remember those stories. It's not about me, but you remember that story. And what you liked about that story is important because there's something that it matters to you that you found out. And as a good salesperson, it doesn't have to be in selling. You could be in a charity. You could be in any kind of community organization. When you tell your stories and how that people want to get in there, now they're most likely going to be more receptive to hearing your ideas about what you're presenting. Maybe it could be for your community, for your religious organization, whatever that is. The stories people remember. And if they didn't like the story, they'll tell you. You say, there's nothing. You say, okay, well, not everybody's a prospect. But you'll remember that story long after this podcast. And so will the people who listen to it, because there was something in there that resonated. So storytelling that could be verified, if you can, that sound, you can't make up stories because you can never make up the same story twice. And that's lying, never acceptable. But you just tell your stories, and your stories matter a lot. And then when you find out, and what it does, it helps the people you're talking to reveal what's really important to them, because they may not even know how to share that with you, but they can say, yeah, that's exactly our problem.
Exactly.
And I'll say, great, nothing's exact. Tell me what is exactly from your perspective and tell me what's a little bit different. And then you're getting down to the meat of it. And then you know how to help them.
Amazing.
And by the way, you still haven't talked about yourself at all, really, right? Because it's all about them.
Yeah, so true. It's really amazing. So your book focus on objective. What is the most misunderstood part of objective handling?
There you go. There's my
clue to closing sale.
There you go. Yeah, that's the book.
Yeah.
There you go. So handling objections, clues for closing the sale. So there's a process in handling objections. And it's there's so much to it. I wrote a whole book about it, right? But it comes down to so many of the same things we've already talked about. It's about recognizing. And by the way, not every question is an objection. Just because somebody asks a question doesn't mean they're objecting to it. And not every objection is a real objection. Sometimes it's what we call a red herring or a distraction. They may just want you to leave, or they just may not want to face something that's really difficult. There's all kinds of reasons those things happen. And you want to acknowledge the objection. You want to get them, you want to repeat it back to them with different words to make sure you understand what they said. You could ask, and then you ask questions about where it's coming from. What would one of the things that is one of the most common objections, doesn't matter what business you're in or where you are, anywhere in the world, it's like, your product costs too much or your service costs too much, right? That's an objection. So some people, they get nervous right away and they offer a discount. Well, the person wasn't necessarily asking for a discount. They just said it costs too much. You don't know what that means. So then you get into this thing. And by the way, when you offer that discount, nobody's going to say no and let you go back to the old price, right? So maybe you just gave away money that you didn't need to give away. And also you set your price for that customer forever, because they're going to say, oh, last time it was this price. And then you're going to, so you have to find out what does that mean. So somebody says, hey, Phil, your coaching costs too much. And I'm going to say to them, I heard you. Because money's important to everybody and making sure you get the value of it. So what I'm curious about is, by the way, I will never be the low price sales coach ever. That's just not my value for how I help you and others is got a lot of value to it. So, but anyways, so tell me why do you say it's too much? What is it that's going on? Now, notice I didn't help. So I didn't say, is it because you're comparing to a competitor? Is it because you don't have that much money in your budget, or you were expecting it to be $1 and it turned out to be $5? Those are the ways you could help. But what I want to do is find out from them without helping them, at least to start, what do you mean? I said, well, What is it? They could say, well, it costs too much. And then I'll help. I'll say, well, compared to what? Is it compared to your expectation? Is it compared, do you have quotes from other sales coaches? Do you have I quoted you something lower in the past and I just completely forgot? What are you comparing this to? So now I just didn't go drop my price and I just didn't go defend my price. I want to find out what's behind that, because there could be nothing behind it. They're just trying to bully you to get a lower price, right? That could be it. Or there could be a real reason. And when you find that out, now you have something to work with. I see. So you were looking at another product or another service that does similar things, and theirs was at a lower price that I'm quoting. Okay. Well, that's great to know. Let's talk some more about that. And I'm not talking about bashing the competition or anything else. Tell me what it is that you like best about that product or service at other companies, and just let them talk. There's no wrong answer. Whatever they tell you, that works. And then you go on and you take that information and you say, what is it that you want to do that you don't get from the other product? Because if you got everything you wanted and you had a good price, why are you talking to me? There's a reason. So there's something that's missing there. So you're either just checking me for a price and you like that, and that's not a good thing to do, or there's something different. So what is it that you want to do or you want to do better? They do it, but you don't like the way it's done or it's not done well enough. And then you shut up. And I tell everybody shut up, not to be rude, because they remember me saying don't talk. If I say be nice, don't talk and listen, people don't listen to that. But they remember me saying shut up and listen. So don't let them talk. And then you let them talk and you find out more and you learn more. And you may learn that, hey, they have a better product than you do. And then you could just excuse yourself and you didn't even have to give a price, because they're not going to buy your product anyway, because you can't do what they need to do. On the other side of that, though, more positive side is it's like, oh, so yours has to be in blue because it's got to fit in this place, and blue is the color, and they don't have that shade of blue that you want. Is that what I hear? So it really is irrelevant what their price is, because you're not going to buy it from them anyways. So here it is. And then you go, so now let's talk about this, because you're never going to get that. And now you're working your way through the objection, and there's ways to check the objection to make sure you handle it well, because you can't move on until you've handled that objection to their satisfaction. And when and how you handle objections, that all factors in too. So there's a lot more to it than this. But frankly, by doing this, not being argumentative, asking those questions again, getting an understanding, and then you know how to handle them. So what did you like, Aro, about those, about what I just shared on how to handle objections?
It's a really amazing way of looking at it. Being that you don't just go ahead and reduce your price without hearing what they have to say. Being that since they have other business in comparison with your price now, I think it's very, very key you get all the information they get to offer once they say your price is too much. So it's more like we say your price is too much, or like more like say in comparison with who. Because price being too high is being that they are comparing with someone, and until you discover what it is, I think you just hold your ground and yes, and actually more like make reference of how you are different from the next person.
Right. And I work with people in the trades a lot. And you know, there's plumbers and there's electricians and carpenters, and even though that's their skill and they're not really salespeople, but they have to sell. And even if they work for a big company, they're the ones who are there. They're the ones who have to say, you know, sell the extended contracts and things like that. But they have to do it in a way that it's a benefit to, you know, and the only way you're going to have a benefit is ask people what's important to them. Everybody's too busy telling people what their benefits are. Well, that's pretty arrogant, but it happens all the time. Why are you telling me what's beneficial to me? I mean, why don't you ask me what's beneficial to me?
Yeah, that's so true.
Because I don't like when people tell me what's beneficial to me. They don't know me.
Yeah, so true.
So
amazing. Thanks for sharing this.
That's you're welcome.
Yeah, so your weakness, huge industry transition, analog to digital, SD to 4K. How should salespeople adapt to rapid change today?
Well, you have to change. I mean, there's things that have happened that changed. 9/11 was a really big thing, and it impacted everybody worldwide, even though it happened, you know, in the United States. And how you can't get into businesses and buildings and things like you did before. Security is a lot different than it was. So there's different methodologies you have to use to sell. In those areas that you talked about, it was really about some salespeople can't make the transition, and then they have to go find something else to do because they're still become old school, if you will. That they're being argumentative and stubborn, you know, for what they're doing. But on the other side, the bigger thing is with the customers. The customers do not want to change away from what they're comfortable with. And so there's transitions in technologies that happen all of the time, and we call them disruptive technologies because they disrupt the way everything happened. And people have to change the way they do things. We're right now living in probably one of the most disruptive technology areas in human history, and that's with artificial intelligence, AI. And AI is changing things. Their jobs are getting replaced. And if people do not adapt to leveraging AI for the good things it can do, I mean, bad people are going to do things with good things all the time. But it's not what you focus on. You focus on what good people do with these things and how it makes your stuff better. And then what you have to do to change, to adapt to that world so you could stay relevant and you could continue to do your things. But if you're going to think you're going to be stubborn and you're going to keep your mouth closed and not eat that good food or eat that new food, and that's the food that everybody else is serving, you're going to starve. And so with artificial intelligence, it's like, it's here for real, and it's just at the baby stage. And so it's time, learn as much as you can. How could you leverage it to help yourself and others? And you're going to be doing just fine because this is a disruptive technology.
Yeah.
And it's not going away any more than the telephone went away or the television. They just don't go away. But now things change, right? Many people are just carrying cell phones with them all the time, right? They don't have phones with landlines everywhere anymore.
Yeah.
And so now the telephone itself is an app on a device, where originally it was a device, right? Going back to my early days when word processors came out, we were selling word processors. They were a giant machine. Now it's Microsoft Word, right? It's an app, and that runs on all kinds of machines. It's a function. And so these are changes in the way things happen, and you have to move with them or you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This is very, very key. So lastly, for young people entering sales now, what is the number one advice you believe will still matters in 20 years from now?
Focus on your customer. Focus on your customer. No matter what you're trained on and how much stuff you're doing, go in there and be curious. When you're focusing on your customer and what's important to them, they're going to respect you right away, even if you have 1 day of experience. If you walk in there and say, hey, and when you're brand new, it's golden because people want to help people who are new. You always get 1 or 2 who are not nice. Don't worry about them. Go away. Go someplace else. There's lots of people out there to work with. But you go out there and you say, hey, I'm brand new. I'm fresh out of school and I'm pretty nervous being here. This is what I do. Just very briefly, could you just help me a little bit and share with me how you use these technologies or what you like about salespeople and everything else? And I'll share a story with you. When I was a very young salesperson in my first sales job, I had an insurance company that was in my territory, and I was calling on the person who was in charge of purchasing, the procurement person in this insurance company. We were talking, and I asked her, what bothers you most about salespeople? And she said to me, when they come here and I want to buy their product, but they never ask me for the order. She goes, they never asked me and I was going to buy it and I don't buy it, then I just let them go. So that was a lesson learned because I asked her and we've had a business relationship that lasted for years because it was, she trusted me, and I learned from her and she bought my products all the time. And she could have bought competitive products, but she didn't. And it was great because I was a young person and did that. And so you can only be young once. So take advantage of it while you can because, and then you evolve. And so my advice is get out there and do it. Be respectful, ask questions, learn, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, make some more mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and things get better and better and better. And you'll evolve very well.
About you, how can they do business with you? How can they get your book? And which platform is the best for doing this?
Okay, so you could go to my website, which is www.beenthere. That's a way where you can learn about what I'm doing. You can see what events are coming up or, all the blogs. And I don't mind giving out my email address for work, which is Phil, Phil, at beenthere.cs.com. And you could drop me a note. Let me know what you thought of the podcast here. If there's something you could use some help with, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm in business, and I'd love to talk to you. As far as the book is concerned, appreciate you asking. You could get it on Amazon. It's available at Amazon.com. Or if you want to you want an ebook copy for your listeners, if they want an electronic book, an ebook copy as a gift from me to them, just drop me a note, an email, or send me a message through the website. Say, hey, Phil, I'd love to have a free ebook copy of Handling Objections, and I'll be happy to send one over to you on email.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Yeah, thank you, Phil. Thank you for sharing your decade of wisdom, real stories, real tactics, and real leadership. To everyone listening, if you want to strengthen your sales and confidence, improve your objective handling, or unlock new levels in your business, visit Beindel Consulting at beindelcs.com. This has been the Aro Benaiah Show, and thank you once again, Phil. It's really a
Thank you
pleasure.
very much, and thank you for the invite.
Yeah, thank you.
Good selling, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. It's really a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being
Yeah,
here.
thank you. And definitely the link is going to be on the show notes for my audience to just reach out.